Here's my review of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, Episode 1. I thought that this was a very solid first episode, and it does a very good job of getting you just engrossed in the world. And because the characters are so interesting, even when Godzilla isn't on screen, it still kind of maintains to keep your attention just through the characters because they're just very likable. They're very interesting. The main premise of this is Kate travels to Japan to kind of learn more about her father, and just then in doing so, she kind of uncovers this mystery. And of course, like, it's one of those things where when you're watching it, a lot of times you're kind of just biting your teeth. You kind of just wanting to know about Godzilla because it's just such an interesting monster. It's just awesome. And fortunately, I mean, you do get to see him early on, and it is pretty cool. The CGI is just impeccable. It looks great, and it gives this sense of just dread, and it's really cool. And you see that in like a flashback, and you could understand, that's why maybe our character kind of seems very nervous and almost timid, probably from all this PTSD. And like she knows like this is like what her father or her mother is like studied, or grandmother, and it's just very interesting to see. And then in the past, you see like her grandmother, like Kyoko, I believe is her name, and you see how they're studying, like they find these Godzilla eggs. And this show has more than just Godzilla. You get a ton of monsters, and it's just very cool to see. And it kind of gives you this sense of horror when like they're in this tunnel or in this cave and like on this island, and just seeing like these monsters it with the just because they're such great CGI, like it just looks incredible. And it's one of those shows. It's never boring, even when the monsters aren't on screen. But when they are, it's just a ton of fun. And like I said, like when these flashbacks are happening and you're seeing all the research that they did, like it's just really cool. And then with Billy, who's basically the younger version of Kurt Russell, who we haven't met yet. He's also very interesting. I mean, I really like this actor. I loved him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought he was one of the few redeeming qualities about this show, and he's great here as well, just like he was in that show. And it's just really cool to see him in like a Godzilla show. Just the idea of this show is just kind of just because a lot of it, maybe I'm just kind of coming off of it where like I'm maybe almost overpraising it because it was just looked so cool and felt so grand. But hey, I had a fun time with it. And also, I think just kind of seeing the terror, like at the beginning, like where it's just this evacuation, it just kind of gets your heart pumping. It's like at the very beginning, it just shows like this is a huge monster, and I thought it just does a really cool job. Just it makes you scared without even showing you what we're scared of, and because of just like the way the music is, the way of how panicky everyone is running, and it's just great. And because this episode does kind of jump around, like when you see Kyoko, Lee, and Billy, like in the past, in I believe the 50s, um, it's just can sometimes be a little bit kind of confusing. I'm like, oh, because like they'll maybe jump back real quick, and then they haven't like established in we're in the past until we actually see our characters, and I'm like, wait, how do we get there? So just a little messy, but it's nothing really. And that's just me nitpicking. Overall, I think this is a really solid episode. And like seeing these monsters though, it's just it makes you so terrified. And this is in the past, and it just makes you almost more terrified with what's going to happen eventually in the future. And one of my favorite shots is like when they first kind of go to this like I think they're actually at the Chernobyl almost. And then just seeing all these eggs and just seeing you just don't stop seeing the light of all these eggs of all these monsters is just I think it's one of my favorite parts. It's just very cool. And because this is kind of like not a horror show, but definitely has horror vibes. Kyoko dies. From all these just tons of just terrifying, disgusting bug monsters, which is just wow, what an awful way to go. I thought this show does a really good job. And even though we only spend a limited time with her, you kind of care about her, even if maybe she only has like it's like a hour long episode. Maybe she's only in it for maybe 30 minutes, maybe even less. But you still care about her enough to just, I mean, feel bad when she dies. And I thought it was done really well here. I mean, actress was great, even though she wasn't even in it that much. And like I said, one of my favorite shots in the whole first episode is when we're seeing Kyoko in the past, and then like through the eyes of our main character, we're seeing like Kate look at her grandmother in the future, like at this past photo, and just seeing her standing there seems normal, and then where it just kind of scans out to see her in just the foot of a ginormous Godzilla monster is just it's awesome. I thought it was just done very well, and that's just what I like so much about the show is that you can feel the budget, you feel the high budget, and it's great. It's so cool that we live in an era though where we can have these multi-million dollar episodes of TV show. And it's also nice that you can actually feel like it cost millions of dollars because it looks good. Not like some of these other shows where you look at the budget of some of these shows and it's like 200 million and it looks garbage. Looking at you, Secret Invasion. But here it actually looks great. And that's what I just like about it so much. And yes, I know I just kind of just feel like I'm praising the visuals here, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, the the show itself and the characters themselves are very interesting, and I'm just kind of very interested in where the show is going to go. So yeah, in this first episode, just kind of flashbacks, learning about the characters, seeing how Kyoko's grandmother, uh, I'm sorry, no, Kate's grandmother and her friends kind of were discovering these Godzilla monsters and all these creatures, and then understanding how maybe how's it going to tag back in with Kate. It just sets up with a whole lot of intrigue, and I'm just very excited to see where it goes.